Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Radio Show. I'm your host, Tim Radio. This is going to be a pretty crazy episode, basically World War III. You hear a lot of people talk about it kind of on the news, how serious it is, how crazy it's going to get between U.S. and Iran. It's escalating pretty quick. I don't know if this is some 4D chess game going on, or if it's just a pissing match. But it's getting pretty nasty pretty quick. I'm going to go through a quick timeline here just to kind of give a little backdrop to it, because there's a lot of stuff that happened through the year that was, at the time, people were like, is it this, is it that, we're not sure. You know, like some tankers, some oil tankers and stuff that looked like they're attacked, and people were trying to determine, it actually looks like it was a little missile or something, it's above it, or it wasn't a mine, because it had all these old mines, like underwater mines, and they're saying like it just was one of those, an old one, and they removed it. But it really looked like Iran had staged an attack or sabotaged or something like that. So anyway, I'm just gonna cover a bunch of those things in this timeline here. So really quick. So basically last year, well, two years ago now, we're in 2020. 2018, the U.S. withdrawals from the Iran nuclear deal. So that's where Trump was saying, you know, Obama gave like $1 billion cash. He did all this stuff. They gave a bunch of money, made these restrictions saying, okay, you can't build any nuclear stuff. We don't want you having nuclear weapons, right? So that kind of goes on for a bit. The U.S. puts sanctions on Iran because Iran kind of just wants to do it anyway. They're not agreeing to stuff. So here's just kind of like a little image of all the stuff that the U.S. kind of imposed sanctions on. So like, you know, $1 billion in planes and exports, gas, cars, gold. Anyway, so 2019 comes, and the U.S. basically announces a part of the military in Iran, like actually part of like a wing, as terrorists. So it's the first time that actually happens, where it's like an official military branch or something like that from another country that is being labeled as a terrorist group instead of some kind of proxy army or something like that. The U.S. starts sending in some stuff. They apply some more sanctions, and Iran starts getting like a little melty, you know, saying don't, you know, like, we're doing this anyway, everybody better step in line, kind of thing, you know, that kind of tone. There's an attack on a pipeline. This like some rebel stuff going on there. Okay, whatever. Never threatened the U.S. So Iran kind of says that, you know, we're gonna fight you guys if you keep messing with us. And Trump's just like, if Iran wants to fight, that'll be the end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. That's in May 2019. Then basically they say that we trolled you into, or some people trolled you into, and kind of reference them like Genghis Khan, I guess. And just saying like, don't be so bold, like you look stupid, like you're being a brute, kind of thing. So then Japan, Shinzo Abe, I think is how you say it, the prime minister, I think they have a prime minister, tries to broker a deal between Iran and the States. Iran doesn't even want to talk to Trump. They hate him now. So anyway, they do that. Then there was this is where that shipping incident happened. This is in June. So basically, like a Norwegian tanker was attacked, and then Iran kind of like came and helped it, but it kind of looked like they actually did it and then helped it, and maybe they didn't want to get caught with the material that they had on it, whatever. And supposedly that was some likely like some kind of sabotage, whatever. Trump sends in more troops. The drone gets shot down. So if you remember, the drone actually got shot down in June, right around the same time as the tanker, and it was unmanned. And this is the spot that Trump was saying he's not gonna, like, remember he said like 10 minutes before the strike was supposed to happen, he pulled back and he said, no, we're not going to attack it. It's disproportionate. It's not proportionate amount. Look, I stopped it. Not proportionate to shooting down an unmanned drone. I am in no hurry. Our military is rebuilt, new, and ready to go. By far the best in the world. Sanctions are biting. And more at it last night. Iran can never have nuclear weapons. Not against the U.S., not against the world. So, okay. Good enough. Iran to confront the threat So they basically take that as a threat. Like, okay, the U.S. puts more sanctions on them. So it just keeps smashing them, basically saying, we're cutting off your business. If you want to get anything in there, get anything out, it's not going to happen. And Iran kept trying to do all this stuff with all these other countries, even putting messages out there saying, like, hey, you guys will help us, we'll help you, blah, blah, let's work together kind of thing. Like getting other countries that may not be part of the sanctions deal, because the EU was part of it. The EU was not buying oil from them, not allowing them to, like, European companies to do business with them. So Iran's kind of like, Russia, Russia, can you give us some weapons and stuff? And then even Russia is kind of like, nah, we're not getting into that stuff with you guys. So even Russia started pulling out a bunch of stuff that they're helping them with. And so anyway, the U.S. sends over some F-22 stealth fighters. Those are some serious beasts. I think those were like those $25 billion planes or something. I don't know. Tehran exceeds the uranium limit, so they just keep pumping out uranium. They're like, hey, look, if you're going to do all this stuff to us, we're just going to bypass the deal, and we're just going to do what we want. So they kind of argue back and forth whether or not they are doing it, whether they're not, they're hiding it, all this kind of stuff. They stop an Iranian oil carrier, so the U.S. Seizes one, the British Royal Marines and custom agents, all this stuff, seize this tanker. And we'll come back to that one in a second. Iran passes new nuclear deal limit, so they just keep going. Well, supposedly they were going to limit it, and they say like, okay, we're going to go back to what we did before, but then they're just going to go past it. Anyway, captain of Iranian vessel arrested. So the guy that was in this tanker up top there, he gets arrested. It's an Indian guy. And supposedly they sent a letter to this guy saying, we got like millions of dollars for you if you take the tanker to the spot where we can seize it. So that the Iranian government ends up posting that information out, saying that that's what the U.S. government did. So then Iran essentially turns around, seizes a British tanker. So, it's just like a pissing match going back and forth over and over. So then the British say that they're going to start escorting their ships with their navy. They're going to send their own like warships alongside kind of thing, so if something happens, they can respond. More sanctions. They do it again. The Iranian tanker, about a month later, they let it go. Then they say here, basically, they up here, they basically imply that it was he was bribed into kind of doing that. Now, whether or not what was on it, whatever. So then Iran starts saying, hey, we got a new air defense system, missile defense system. So they couldn't get it from Russia anymore, so they started building their own ones in like 2010. Then they say it's better than the ones they got like 10 years ago. I mean, got to get a little faster than that, but whatever. They got their own little thing there. I don't know if that's exactly it, but I guess so. Then they meet with Macron, the French president, try to get some broker deal again. Trump doesn't like it, though. He doesn't buy into it because basically they want to give them like a financial lifeline, and that was part of the deal. But Trump's like, no money. You get nothing until you stop. Like, that seems to be what they're doing. They're saying, like, we'll help you, but we'll help you be your own country and do your own thing and do all that kind of stuff. But you got to stop this and stop that and stop the other thing. So it's whatever. Then they put sanctions on the space industry because they're like, you guys, what are you guys trying to get into space for? You can't even do trade with other countries. What are you doing trying to get into space? It's clearly just look, the United States will not allow Iran to use its space launch program to cover its advanced ballistic missile programs. Of course, that's what they don't want to build space rockets. They're building missiles. That's the whole premise to everything. They don't want uranium for nuclear power because they could just have those things made, like nuclear power. They can just have that made by other countries and stuff like that if they didn't have sanctions. But the fact that they're building nuclear weapons is the problem. They're stockpiling uranium and stuff like that so they can build weapons, and they're not denying it. They're like, yeah, we you guys got them, we want them. Fair enough. So U.S. offers money to captain of Iranian tankers. So this is actually the part where they kind of reported that that whole tanker thing was planned somehow or coordinated. Anyway, Iran keeps doing some more crazy stuff for weapon stuff. And this is September of just a couple months ago. Bolton, the mustache guy, gets fired. So on September 10th, that's when Trump fires him. Apparently because he was just kind of warmongering. He wanted to go to war. He wanted to smash Iran. Trump seems to want to do this from the economic side because, and you saw this in the news, like you probably saw a lot of references to this where Trump accused Obama of wanting to go to war as a re-election plan, like that would help him get reelected. Just because it's statistically that's what happens. President going to war, they're going to get back because you don't want to flip-flop in the middle of a war like a new leader or whatever. So he had accused Obama of doing that 8 years ago or whatever. And so they were using that against Trump, saying, look, you're doing the same thing, you're going to go to war. But I actually think it's kind of the opposite. I think he wants it to kind of look like we'd go to war, but he's going to stop it and not do it and has no intention of going to war. And he just wants to use the negotiation. He's the negotiator. He doesn't want to actually go to war. He doesn't want to play the tough guy. He doesn't want to... He rebuilt the military and all that kind of stuff, spent $1 trillion or something. I don't think he actually wants to go spend it, right? He wants to get paid for it. He wants to be... It's kind of like having bodyguards and stuff. You don't want to actually use your bodyguards. You just want to have the best bodyguards and look really tough and stuff so that nobody messes with you and that you can send your guys up to the door, but you don't want them actually going out and getting in action. That just looks really bad for a whole bunch of reasons. And it's just not the style. But anyway, Trump calls him out, sanctions again, more stuff. Iran just keeps pumping out the nuclear stuff. I mean, really cranking it up. Then they start protecting the waters again because, this whole Gulf Strait thing where all this oil comes in and out. They're trying to send oil in and out of Syria, all these different things. And talk about more nuclear stuff. Then Iran shoots out another drone. Then there's some unrest in Iran because now Iran's really getting cash strapped, totally cash strapped. They got no money, so they throw up the gas price 300%, just smash the people with it. People get pissed. 100 Iranian cities and people were getting really mad, going out to the streets protesting, all this kind of stuff. 100 people died from it, just from the unrest of it. They put more sanctions, on specific people and stuff, saying you can't travel and that kind of thing. So they just keep shooting off to each other a bit. This is an interesting part. 8 with links to CIA arrested. The official news agency IRNA reported on November 27th that Iranian security agents arrested at least 8 people linked to the CIA during the deadly unrest over petrol price increases. So just above where they throw up the prices 300% on gas overnight, and then all this protest happening. Iran's basically saying the U.S. has stoked that kind of unrest. So these elements had received CIA-funded training in various countries under the cover of becoming citizen journalists. IRNA quoted the intelligence ministry as saying, quote, 6 were arrested while attending the riots and carrying out CIA orders, and 2 while trying to ... send information abroad. So I don't know if that's a pause, verbal pause, or if they're skipping some redundant info. But basically, Iran saying the CIA sent the U.S. government sent in these guys to do this kind of stuff. Now, how exact that is, it probably is CIA funded stuff. Now, whether or not, how deep it is, it could actually just be journalists that have funding for something if you're going to war zones and stuff, how you deal with certain things, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, how to send back confidential information and stuff. But I think that would be pretty consistent with a lot of type of journalists that would go there. How long these people are there, if there are plants, if they're pretending to be certain things. Usually when people are in the CIA, they're they have false identity, like they're pretending to be certain people. They're not actually, even if it's just caricaturized, it's not, or a character or whatever, a type of whatever. So anyway, Pentagon denies considering more troops. So in December, just last month there's people talking about whether or not they're going to send some more troops. Apparently 14,000 troops was considered to confront the perceived threat to Iran. So a warship seized, a U.S. Navy warship seized advanced missile parts on December 4th, believed to be linked to Iran from a boat it had stopped in the Arabian Sea. Then they do a prisoner swap for some reason. There was this guy here, Mossad Soleimani, not the Soleimani guy that I don't think it's any relation to the one that gets assassinated here later. But this guy's like just a researcher. He was even going over with the Mayo Clinic. Apparently he was invited by the Mayo Clinic, which is a pretty big medical institution. And when he came over, he was trying to bring back like growth agents, biological growth agents, back to Iran. But then he got busted on the way. And so the U.S. just kept him. So it seems like it probably goes a little deeper than that, because does Iran even want him? And then Ziyu Wang, a Chinese-born U.S. citizen, was held there since 2016. Now, I'll throw this disclaimer out there now. I'll say like a bunch of crazy stuff. I'll say a bunch, whatever. It's not to, no offense to the people who died in this. No offense to, the prisoners, the people, all this kind of stuff. But I gotta throw some crazy stuff out there, because more often than not, well, not more often, but a lot of times it ends up being even crazier. The truth is so often crazier than fiction. So when I see something like this, I think the guy could have been, not a spy, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Chinese-sponsored citizens in the States. Just like what we talked, not just like, but similar to how we talked about the sleeper cells that different terrorist organizations have in different countries, so that if they need to do something remotely, they can do it. They can, these people, this plumber guy that does his job every day gets activated, and like some kind of sci-fi movie, but it's like they get called in, they say, okay, now it's time to do whatever, and they're like, all right, time to do it. And like that's their job, is just to basically, it's a sleeper cell. That's the whole point. They exist. All right, they exist. So anyway, when I see something like that, they're trading for a Chinese-born U.S. citizen for a guy that was supposedly just there for, sending back medical stuff, like pretty straightforward, like stem cell stuff, stem cell type research. Why was that such a big deal? Why did they have to even swap them? Why weren't they just both released? Why was the Swiss government in between? It just seemed weird. It seemed a little deeper than, I don't know. And look, man, they got like a United States of America special plane, but they're not even going to send them back, coach. I don't know. Anyway, budget of resistance. So Iran goes out on December 8th and says, we got a $39 billion budget of resistance to counter U.S. sanctions. Where we got $39 billion, nobody needs to know. But we got $39 billion. And, they could have raked that in on the gas. Like, considering the fact that they basically have, like, free gas in a lot of ways. I don't see why not. But anyway, it was to reduce the hardships, help them through the sanctions. Okay, a lot of stuff here. It includes a 15% wage increase for public sector employees. So that'll basically put you into the public sector. So you're like, okay, cool, man, I can go get a pay raise, work in the public sector. Go into the public sector. What do they often have? I don't know. We saw this with the U.S. recently about the draft. People talking about the draft. You get financial aid from the government. You're essentially defaulted into the draft. You're basically the first people that go into the draft. So I would not be surprised if that's something similar in Iran. I think they do have to do like 2 years military service anyway. So I don't know I think they have something along those lines. So regardless, if you're able-bodied, you have to go do 2 years military service. But to get a 15% wage increase for public sector employees, I think there's something tied to that as well. I think that's kind of a subliminal recruitment kind of thing. Anyway, sanctions on Iran's biggest airline, so boom, more sanctions again. Just keep financially ripping them up. Visa restrictions, basically now you guys can't even leave there. We're not even going to let you leave because you were suppressing peaceful protests and opposed sanctions on two Iranian and they kind of mixed up the sentence there, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, look, that's so crazy. U.S. contractor killed. So right after Christmas, a rocket attack on an Iraqi military base killed U.S. contractor and wounded several U.S. service members in Iraqi personnel. So basically, what happens a lot of times, the U.S. military can't do certain things or doesn't have the skills or the upkeep to be able to maintain certain kind of programs. So a lot of times when people leave the military, they can start like a defense contract company and start providing services to the military. So they do that a lot. And sometimes it's training, sometimes it's logistical stuff, sometimes it's like just an electronics company. We saw this with like Halliburton. We saw this with that, even HP, like the Hewlett Packard company. They have a sub company that they own that does like all this military equipment and stuff like that. So they have like these juiced up military guys that are like tech nerds that can go deploy super crazy computer stuff and all that, you know. They get like all these different kind of subcontractors. So, you know, that's presumably a U.S. citizen, U.S. Contractor. So anyway, U.S. targets militia sites. So 2 days later, on the 29th, U.S. military carried out defensive strikes on sites in Iraq and Syria belonging to Hezbollah that Washington said were in retaliation for the killing of the U.S. contractor. Now, keep in mind that U.S. contractor, there's a lot of money there. There's a lot of money as a U.S. contractor overseas in doing military work. And for the states to, they don't normally treat that the same. They don't treat that the same as if that's military personnel killed or as if it's a civilian killed. It's kind of its own thing. Because a lot of times they're even going outside of the confines of the rules of war. So these people might even be part of rebel groups. They might be kind of like we saw above, like CIA, you know, individual journalists, but that are CIA funded operatives at the same time. Those kind of things, like that is real stuff that happens. I don't know how much it applies in these cases, in which context, but anyway, a bunch of them die. Okay, all right. Then the protesters stormed the U.S. embassy. So just New Year's Eve, basically, enraged members and supporters of the pro-Iranian paramilitary groups in Iraq broke into the heavily fortified U.S. embassy compound in Baghdad, which apparently is like the most fortified embassy in the world. There's no way that they would have got through. They wouldn't have done anything. They wouldn't have killed anybody. It wouldn't have got that far, really. And then Trump basically blamed Iran for killing that contractor before that escalated all these things. And so it's their fault. Iran has orchestrated an attack on the U.S. embassy in Iraq. They will definitely be held fully responsible. Iran will be held fully responsible for lives lost or damage incurred at any of our facilities. They will pay a very big price. This is not a warning. It is a threat. Happy New Year. So, I mean, total Trump there. It's not funny. It's horrible, but it's still, you got to find the humor in it. The funny part is the fact that he says, this is not a warning. And he capitalized W and he capitalized threat. It's just kind of a weird thing. But he says, this is not a warning. It is a threat. Usually kind of like that line, the TV line, it's like, are you threatening me? It's not a threat. It's a promise. It's kind of like one of those things, but he's just actually kind of using it in the plain way. It's like, this is not a warning. It's a threat. Like, no, I'm threatening you. Is that a threat? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a threat. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny. He always has like this. He would never say a movie line, of course, right? But that's kind of his own movie line. Yeah, so they're mad. Look how mad they are. Not very big turnout there, it doesn't seem like. Oh, That's not right. Look at that. That's anti-Jewish slang right there. That's anti-Semitic. There's a Michael Jackson song, They Don't Really Care About Us. And he says, kick me, kike me, don't you black or white me. And they bleep out that word in every version of the song. So he can say all the other stuff, every other word. People can say the N word and all this stuff, but you cannot say that word right there in any way at all, ever. But it's kind of weird that they just post that picture there, and that's a protester. They basically call them a protester. Now, I don't know if they wrote that or not, but I don't know, whatever. So, 2020, here we are, 2020. Almost there. Basically, I'll just get this part quick. U.S. assassinates this leader. This leader is considered like super anti-terrorist in a lot of ways. So he's fighting ISIS. He's fighting all these other groups. And a lot of people were kind of liking him for being that severe. Now, a lot of U.S. people got killed in that at the same time by them, attacked by this guy and stuff. So that's kind of the premise of why they're allowed to kill him. But it's kind of like one of those double-edged swords. Kind of like, I think even Saddam Hussein was in the same kind of light. He was brutal, but he was also brutal to terrorists. So when he got taken out, there's a vacuum. They create that vacuum. So, they'll do terrorism in one way, but they don't like it in another way, and whatever. So the U.S. Act of International Terrorism, targeting and assassinating General Soleimani, the most effective force fighting Daesh, ISIS, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, is extremely dangerous and foolish escalation. The U.S. bears responsibility for all consequences of its rogue adventurism. So they're basically saying, like, that's war. So this is basically the day the war started. Was, I guess, the second. Probably really the first. The set-in ended in the first. The second, it's the attack. Now, Trump goes and says, because Iran said they're going to retaliate for that. Several ways. They said it many, many different ways. They said they're going to retaliate for that. And then they say 52 sites to be targeted if Iran retaliates. So Trump says, we have targeted 52 Iranian sites representing the 52 American hostages taken by Iran many years ago, some at very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture, and those targets and Iran itself will be hit very fast and very hard. The U.S. wants no more threats. So they're saying, he's quite clearly saying, now, why is he making the 52 reference? I don't know why. Like, Iran held hostages for 444 days after being seized by U.S. Embassy in Tehran in 1979, right? So, I mean, it's an old reference. I don't know why it's 52. But we're going to see some information about that in a second. Anyway. So Trump says, I'm going to hit 52. Now, some people said, is that cultural sites? Is that this? Supposedly, he kind of walked it back. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. He didn't quite specify whether or not there'd be cultural sites. Just said that they're very important to Iran and the Iranian culture. But doesn't, it probably was talking about it. It's Trump. That's probably what he was saying. But he had to walk it back a bit. He doesn't mind walking it back as long as he doesn't have to say it. So then Iran's army chief actually goes out on the 5th and says the U.S. lacks the courage for military confrontation with Iran. So basically saying, you guys are too pussy to fight with us. It's crazy. Then they said like thousands mourn during the funeral. They said it was millions, and they said it was thousands. There's both there. Iran abandons nuclear deal limits, so they're like, we're going full tilt. Rockets target Baghdad Green Zone. So on the 5th there, just a couple days ago, more rockets hit near heavily fortified green zone housing buildings and foreign missions the Iraqi military. So basically, this is like a zone they're not really supposed to be fighting in. The Trump threatens to go after Iranian cultural sites. That's kind of what I just kind of covered that. This is all on the same kind of day here. And then just skip this. Look at this. This is like the president there saying those who refer to the number 52 should also remember the number 290. IR 655. Never threaten the Iranian nation. So those who refer to the number 52 should also remember the number 290. What is that? What's 290? Flight Iran Air 655. 290 people died, and it was the U.S.'s fault. The U.S. accidentally shot down an Airbus A300. They just shot it down. 290 people were killed. The reason for the shootdown had been disputed between the government over the two countries. According to the United States government, the crew of USS Vincennes had incorrectly identified the Airbus as an attacking F-14 Tomcat, a U.S.-made jet fighter that had been part of the Iranian Air Force inventory since the 1970s. So, they shot that sucker down. Eventually, they reached a settlement in International Court of Justice. So, they paid out $213,000 per person to the families. But this happened, right? So basically, the Iranian president was saying those who remember, this should remember this. But I don't know if that's him apologizing or if this is him saying that we're going to do this to you. If you're going to say this about us, we're going to do this. It's too vague, but never threaten the Iranian nation. Should also remember the number 290. Okay. So U.S. created Global Infantry, U.S. Fury, Global Anti-U.S. Fury. So this is the part I want to start shifting. Okay, so check this. Iran considering 13 revenge scenarios. So they even said it yesterday, that they've considered 13 revenge scenarios in retaliation. So this is ramping up big time right here. Now, supposedly yesterday, things actually cooled down. They had a little talk there. They said they're ready to kind of come to the table, whatever. Trump kind of walks it back saying, they wouldn't target cultural sites, were just whatever. And then they say that they want to de-escalate and they want to stop it. We're not looking to get started a war with Iran, but we are prepared to finish one. What we'd like to see is the situation de-escalated. And then Iran launches attack on U.S.-led forces. So then, basically early that day, I don't know if their time, our time, whatever, just more attacks. 2 of the 17 missiles targeting the base did not go off. I think... because this kind of seems weird. How come these missiles never seem to actually get to where they're supposed... They keep neutralizing. They have some kind of tech where they're neutralizing these things remotely. Or sending them off course, crashing them early. Because even when they say that they're supposed to attack, it's not an effective target to attack. It looks like they're trying to get somewhere else, but they keep getting neutralized. So I just want to point that out there. It doesn't seem like they're actually hitting places or that they're even any real threat, but they just keep launching off missiles anyway. Hoping that, one gets through. Because, whatever. Look. Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense under Article 51 of UN Charter, targeting base from which cowardly armed attack against our citizens and senior officials were launched. We do not seek escalation or war, but we will defend ourselves against any aggression. And then Trump, later that day, night, all is well, Missiles launched from Iran at 2 military bases located in Iraq. Assessment of casualties and damages taking place now. So far, so good. We have the most powerful, well-equipped military anywhere in the world by far. I will be making a statement tomorrow morning. So, Trump was supposed to make a statement last night. This attack kind of thing happened in the day. He was supposed to address the nation yesterday, like around 8 o'clock p.m. yesterday. Now, it got postponed because like a lot of the news shows were even saying he's supposed to do an address, blah, blah, blah. He's supposed to address the nation about this because everybody's getting kind of freaked out about the whole thing. And the actual market was starting to respond to it as well. So the markets were starting to retreat a bit. He postpones it, and then he had like a little speech this morning. So we're on the 8th of January, and I'm just going to play a couple parts of this and skip through it real quick. Look how he enters. I mean, that's a pretty badass entrance. I mean, you gotta have a good. I just want to rewind that because that's pretty funny. That's a good picture. Anyway, it's just kind of.
Will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Good morning. I'm pleased to inform you the American people should be extremely grateful and happy. No Americans were harmed in last night's attack by the Iranian regime. We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe, and only minimal damage was sustained at our military bases. Our great American forces are prepared for anything. Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world. No American or Iraqi lives were lost because of the precautions taken, the dispersal of forces, and an early warning system that worked very well. I salute
an early warning system. So basically like, missile detection stuff. But it's kind of weird. He gets like dry mouth. So he must be, there's some kind of medication that he uses that gives him dry mouth or something. Because he talks like.
Destructive and destabilizing behavior in the Middle East and beyond. Those days are over. Iran has been the leading sponsor of terrorism, and their pursuit of nuclear weapons threatens the civilized world. We will never let that happen. Last week, we took decisive action to stop a ruthless terrorist from threatening American lives. At my direction, the United States military eliminated the world's top terrorist, Qasem Soleimani. As the head of the Quds Force, Soleimani was personally responsible for some of the absolutely worst atrocities.
So, I mean, you can play the whole thing, watch the whole thing there. Just thought, that was kind of crazy. Because it ties into the other stuff, too. So, right now, they're starting to stop all flights and everything from that area because there was airline that crashed. So I want to play this right quick as well.
With more on the crash, I'm joined in studio now by aviation analyst Phil Dirty. Phil, let's talk first of all about the flight, because we know that the plane came down about 6 minutes into takeoff.
Correct, Marcia. It was a 737-800, very popular aircraft. And you can see behind me that the aircraft took off out of the Tehran airport, runway 29, heading to the northwest. Made a slight turn to the north to go towards Kiev, and then 6 minutes into the crash, 6 minutes into the flight, the aircraft crashed. You can see also that everything seems to be normal. So we have the altitude is increasing, the speed is increasing, right to the point at 7,925 feet where we lost contact with the aircraft and all other information was lost. So from that point on, we don't know exactly what happened.
Okay, so Phil, the initial video of the crash shows a lot of burning debris spread across that farmland. What does that suggest to you?
Well, the flight was scheduled for 3 hours and 45 minutes. Had about 5.5 hours of fuel on board, so almost about 25,000 to 30,000 pounds of fuel. Now, if the aircraft came apart in flight or when it impacted the ground, that's when the fuel would have ignited. There is speculation that the aircraft was, in a way, a fireball when it started going down.
What does the debris field tell you?
Well, the debris field tells us a big story. If we take a look at a crash site, if the aircraft just went down in a straight fashion, we'd have a very centralized area. You can see behind me that this debris field is very extensive. It's very spread out, and there's not any large pieces or parts that are discernible. You cannot see exactly what we're looking at. One of the things, too, is you can see the amount of people that are at the crash site. It's very important that we secure the evidence and secure the crash site to make sure that all the pieces and parts get brought back to the investigators, and that way we can show a good picture of what happened to this aircraft.
Phil, is that normal to have that many people walking around parts of a plane? This is really a scene that needs to be carefully handled and considered, yet we seem to have tens of people there.
There's hundreds of people.
Hundreds of people, yeah, because as you said, the area is about 1 kilometer in distance.
Yes, it's almost a square kilometer, the debris field. But also one of the things is that you have uninformed people. You have people on the crash site that don't know what they're looking at, and they'll be picking up pieces and parts. They'll be disturbing evidence, and we want to be able to keep everything intact at the scene so we know exactly what happened. But having unqualified people picking up debris is not a good thing.
Okay, so now in charge of the investigation is Iran with the help of Ukraine?
Right. So what the protocol will be is that, first of all, because the accident happened in Iran, they take the lead. So Iran has priority. The aircraft was operated by the Ukrainians, so the Ukrainians will also be involved in the investigation. But the FAA will want to be in there, and also Boeing, because Boeing wants to know what happened with this airplane.
What's the first question you would have for investigators?
Well, the first thing is let's find out what was in the black boxes.
Black boxes. Okay. Phil Dirty, thank you so much. So glad.
Now, supposedly Iran's not going to give over the black box. They refused to give it to Boeing. Boeing is the company that created the plane. Now, keep in mind, this has nothing to do with those 787 MAX planes or something like that. Nothing to do with it. These planes have been around forever. There's thousands of them flying every day, every single day. It's probably the safest machine ever made in transport. So it has nothing to do with that for sure. It has absolutely nothing to do with those MAX planes. That was a very specific type of issue, and those are all basically, none of them are in action. This is a very different kind of plane, totally different. One of the unusual things is that there were 63 Canadians on it. So these were actually Canadian citizens on board coming from Iran to Ukraine. So they're going from Iran to Ukraine. There's 176 people, 63 were Canadians. I just think that that's a weird, it's an awful lot of Canadians on that particular flight. It just seems a little bizarre. Anyway, I'm going to give some ideas and theories here. It's, again, no offense to any of this. I'm not, it's just to throw out the crazy questions so that people can look into it and think about it, and kind of like a mental experiment. But the couple of weird things I thought about this, to me, clearly the thing was shot down. I mean, it was blowing up, and it blew up in the sky. And I'm going to show you some pictures here of other plane crashes. Now, as far as I know, there's no bodies seen in any of these, so there's nothing crazy, but it is kind of crazy pictures. But no, from what I can see, there's no, illicit, crazy image part of that. You're not going to see heads on the ground or something. But if so I'm going to pull that up now. So if we look at like virtually every plane crash where the plane actually crashes and hits the ground, this is essentially what it looks like. I mean, a devastating scene to see, absolutely. But the thing to note is that the thing doesn't disintegrate. You know, the plane doesn't just get pulverized. Some people would expect that just because, but they're not going full speed. They're dropping, right? So usually when these plane crashes, they're dropping to the ground. They lose a lot of speed, and they just go bam, and they just belly flop basically. And that's usually why they look like this kind of image, where it's just one thing, usually snaps in half. You know, if it even does that, it doesn't get pulverized. So even when like almost everything's gone, there's nothing like, it's just not that insane, right? It's not like what we're seeing here, where it's like acres of just debris on fire. So, and they're saying, okay, it had a bunch of fuel on it, but even still, it would still be centralized. It's not like the thing blew up like an atomic bomb and just spread debris everywhere. Even when the things light fire, the tanks will blow up, flames go up in the air. It's not gonna hit the ground and then blow up and then shatter the stuff all over the place. This stuff came raining down from what it looks like. Like, this thing was blown up in the air, and of course all that fuel gets blown up as well. Projectiles, everything to the ground basically, and just rains down all this debris. So of course there's not going to be any really single large parts of it, and it's going to be stuff everywhere. The other weird part was it showed, you know, some like half burnt teddy bears and magazines and stuff like that in the debris. And I actually went on the side and tried to look at the earliest pictures possible to see if any kind of bodies or something like that. There's nothing. Like, there's absolutely nothing. You would think there'd be hands and stuff, like some brains, like, not to be disrespectful, but you would imagine carnage. Like, you would imagine there'd be blood and stuff. That, how come the teddy bear, a fleeced heavy teddy bear, like basically plastic, it would melt, or cotton and stuff, just disintegrate. Paper would instantly burn. Like, I mean, how is that surviving? It makes me think of the 9/11 thing where they found the passports, you know? And this has happened many times where they, not to suggest these people, these, you know, 63 Canadians didn't die, or the 176 people didn't die, but they've duped stuff like that before. They've even just made up personalities, made up, you know, profiles of people, images. They can fake it all. Like, you know, there's only so many connections that you have to fake before it disintegrates. Like, you don't have to actually prove anything beyond that point. You just get one person. I grew up with her. She was my best friend. Okay, well then nobody can argue it, right? So it's a hard thing to kind of suggest, but they've done it before many times, either way, they absolutely, these people could have been on it. It just seems weird that there doesn't seem to be any bodily carnage from what I've seen. And it comes right at that moment where there's like escalations and stuff going back and forth, and it seems like that people really want to go to war. Like, there's a group of people that absolutely want to go into war, and this is exact kind of flag that they need to happen to get thrown up, to be like, that's it, it's go time. But then Canada, you know, the Prime Minister of Canada even responded like, we're deeply saddened by this. I'd be like, you suckers, somebody shot that shit down. I don't know who did it, but somebody did it. Somebody shot that down, and we're going over there and we're checking it out, because you're threatening, like, okay, a man sitting there for like 6 months saying, we're going to do this, and then the U.S. kills one of their top guys, and they're like, we're really pissed, and then they start firing missiles at a U.S. base the day before, and then a passenger plane gets blown up, like in the sky, where it clearly did not malfunction and crash. I mean, it's so friggin' obvious that was blown up in the sky. The only question is, like, okay, how serious is that? Like, because they didn't care when it was an unmanned drone. So it makes me think that this wasn't, you know, that there's something illegitimate about it. Either, you know, it's faked people, or the more rational thinking is that they just blew it up. Like, they straight up, they don't even care. They'll just blow up the plane. They don't even care if it's real people. You know, so it can be 100% legitimate. These people, just going, all these people from Iran going to Ukraine, they're just taking this flight, and Iran's just like, blow the sucker up. Let's get this thing rolling, or whatever. It doesn't just blow up. You know, there is always the chance that it is. I mean, obviously, there's always that chance that it's a fluke, it's whatever. But you would better believe if I was president. I mean, whatever. You know, you always get more information when you're president, but just from face value of what we see right now, I would be pissed. I would be like, we're going in there hot. We're not retaliating, but we're gonna find out what happened in that thing, and if that thing was shot down. I mean, pull up the satellite stuff. They got daily satellite images of the entire planet. Like, there's websites that you can subscribe to have access to it. So of course the governments have access to it. They can see it. They can almost see this stuff live. And if it's with Iran, you better believe they have live video feed of Iran, especially in these times right now, to see what's going on. And I mean like live video feed of the entire country from satellite imagery, or at least hotspots, at least their air bases and stuff. So it's kind of weird because you always think that like these people know so much more. So like, you know, you would assume that the government has a lot more information behind the scenes, and that's why they're acting the way they do, even though it's counter to the way we would act sometimes. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I think some of the people like that might not be real people is just because of the idea that it just seems so obvious that if you actually did kill those, if that there were people on that, and that thing blew up the way that it looks like, what we're seeing, that was blown up on purpose, and they just killed a whole bunch of people. Excuse me. Anyway, that's my crazy conspiracy theory. But, look, Iran says it will not give the black box of Ukrainian plane to Boeing. So Boeing wants to see it. They want to know. They want to make sure that their plane wasn't defective. Iran's like, nope. And then they said later that, it was destroyed. I mean, those things are virtually indestructible. You can't. The whole point of it is to survive the plane crash. Can it survive a missile crash? I mean, this is not debris from a plane crash. That's a debris from an explosion. But I mean, it's crazy. I'm going to play this. I didn't see this. I don't know if this is bad. The first footage of the moment the plane crashes. So I'm going to hit it and see what happens. Oh, yeah. They even said, that was the other thing, too. They said it was on fire in the sky. And then look, boom, goes down. Like a rock. Yeah, I mean, that's how they explained it, too, so... Unreal. So I would say someone heard the boom. What the heck? They look up, they see this thing.
هواپیما آتیش گرفته. شهریار فردوسیه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. خدای خود.
So I mean, it just seems insane. But the other weird thing that I thought, now this is kind of another crazy conspiracy theory, but Puerto Rico is having all these little mini earthquakes for like a little while, and then the same day that they had like this big earthquake, then there's another earthquake in Iran that messes up like one of their nuclear plants. Now, I thought that was just weird because, again, they're talking all this uranium stuff. This happens. They get hit with quite a coincidence for a natural disaster. They have weapons to trigger that. Like, they absolutely have seismic control weapons where they can trigger, like, things in fault lines and stuff like that. They basically smash it with a rocket, like a drill rocket, that penetrates the dirt and everything, and then they let off a bomb. And then that will hit, like, a fault line and trigger... it can trigger earthquakes halfway around the world. And I feel like because in Puerto Rico they got some base, they got a lot of military base there and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some, since it's kind of the quasi territory of U.S. or not, that they have like some, special weapons there or something like that. I think that's what they're. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think that's what they're doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was something along those lines, because you're always going to have some negative effect. It's just like when, like Russia will have these big military parades. They do. They'll geoengineer for like, up to a week before the event, so that it's clear. It's not going to rain. Never rains in Russian parades, and they just will make sure they'll steer the clouds and stuff like that, or feed the cloud so that it drops rain before it gets to that spot. But that always has some kind of other balancing effect somewhere else. So that spot's going to get the rain, and then we'll get the clear, or vice versa, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's, that's how that thing can happen. Like they launch something from here, but it triggers over there, and that triggers it back, and whatever. I don't know. It's just kind of I thought that was an odd coincidence that 2 earthquakes strike near Iran nuclear plant. Like just today, this morning. All right. Anyway, which one is this one? Oh yeah. So then now today, they're really starting to try to ease it again with that the speech that we saw Trump say earlier. Them saying that they appear to be standing down against the retaliatory attacks, even though they just did it yesterday. Just it's so weird, man. That's so bizarre. So just as a quick little prediction, will they actually go to war? Will they actually fight? Is this actually going to blow out of proportion? Based on what I saw today, I think so. I think that it is going to escalate. I don't think this is going to de-escalate. Even though there's a lot of talk of it de-escalating, them doing some kind of deal, something blah, blah, blah. I think it's just going to keep going the way it's going. And eventually it'll just pop. And I think Canada's going to be involved in it. I think once it comes out that thing was blown up, Canada is going to suit up. And they're going to be next to the States. Britain's going to pop in on that. The UK, a lot of the European Union's going to jump in on it, and this is going to be a big doozy. Now, if Russia gets in on it, would Russia back Iran? Because they do have a lot of ties together. Would they back Iran? That's a hard one. It almost seems like they would have to. But I don't think they will. I think it's just going to be straight up on Iran, just going to Iran and battling it out there. I think they're just going to send over a whole bunch of troops. So, like tens of thousands of troops. I think they're going to end up sending over there and basically just taking over the place. Just kind of seems inevitable. And I only say that because it just like the pissing match going back and forth. They've been doing it for like 6 months. They haven't come off anything. They really are smashing them hard with the sanctions and stuff. So it's either Iran folds, like they just straight up fold. Okay, fine, ease the sanctions and we won't do anything bad anymore. They're just not gonna. There's too many groups. There's way too many infiltrate groups. Too many subsidiaries of terrorism to just let it. Like, all right, you guys, all right, U.S., you win. Western civilization can continue. No, the whole premise is that they got to annihilate. Like, well, there's one. The religious aspect of it is for violent jihad, where they're essentially trying to convert the rest of the world to Islam, or kill it. So if you don't join, you lose, and even some say you can't even join. You're just if you're not part of the family, you're not part of the family. You're eventually going to be exterminated, and that's the whole idea of bringing the end of the world. That's the new coming. This all this stuff, right? That's kind of the underlying premise for a lot of these terrorist organizations. It's not just like they're not just mad that the states are there. They don't want the states to exist. They don't want Canada to exist. They don't want Europe to exist, right? And if it exists under them, not them under it. So that's why I think it's ultimately going to have to go to war. because it'll just never end. It'll just never stop. It's going to be a perpetual war forever, regardless. That's just what it is. It has been. It has been a war. It's never went away. I mean, this is some of the birthplace of humanity, basically. Like, this is there's so much religious stuff in this but as like the birthplace, this in Africa, just go a little lower to the left, to the west, and literally come out of there, start civilization here, and spread out through the world. And now we're like going back there to defeat them from, I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy stuff. But we'll see what happens. A little lighter note, I just want to cover this other thing I thought was kind of interesting. Now, this kid from the Covington Catholic lawsuit. So this kid here, Nick Sandman, this was a thing. They were on the news saying, oh my God, look at this racist MAGA supporter. He's wearing a MAGA hat. He's in front of this Native American guy. And he's just like laughing in his face. So disrespectful. It's racist. It's classic Trump supporter. All this kind of stuff. The news was really saying all this kind of stuff. I'm going to show you some clips too. The lawyer ended up throwing a $275 million lawsuit against CNN. Because CNN was just like blatantly attacking the kid. All these people went out there and said like, oh, this Bill Maher, I'll show you the clips. Sorry, I got the hiccups. So anyway, they hit them with a $275 million lawsuit. Now, they're a news agency, right? So they don't have to give coverage to it. Nothing else is giving coverage to the lawsuit. So it's not a PR issue. It's been sitting there for like 6 months now. It's not even a PR issue. So it's not like they're getting pressured into actually settling. It's purely because they think they're wrong. They would actually lose the case, so they settled it court for an undisclosed amount. Excuse me. So anyway, I just want to cover a little clip here that this person had made. I would suggest looking at it. I mean, I can't believe it's only 141 views, but it must be a copy or something like that. But anyway, they have this video, kind of covers the whole thing in 15 minutes. I'm just going to skip through it really quickly.
Great Again hats, which were acceptable attire for the pro-life event they had just attended. A few yards away were 5 black men.
So yeah, just to kind of a quick premise, some context there. Basically, tell you short what happened, and then I'm going to show you the clips. There's like a school event. It's a Catholic school. They go to this memorial thing. It's a pro-life parade as well. They go there. It's pro-life, so they're anti-abortion, pro-life, whatever. So they're just marching saying, give your kids up for adoption if you need to, or do this, or there's options, and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, that's pretty MAGA friendly. It's a conservative viewpoint. And anyway, they do that thing. The event's over. They're basically waiting at like the memorial section in Washington for the bus to come. And these guys, they're called Black Israelites. Kind of a terrorist group themselves, really. I mean, at least these guys, I don't know if that they represent the group or what, but basically these guys are total shitbags. And you'll see why. But they started yelling at all these like white Christian kids, mostly white Christian kids, all these obscenities and stuff. And the kids don't even do anything bad. They're like really positive. They're nice. Then the native guy comes over and starts kind of banging the drum and kind of doing something. And they just stands there and does it in front of the guy's face for a minute. And then they kind of disperse. And then that's basically it. Then CNN and all these other people took that clip of him just smiling in the guy's face and then blew it up. And then the Native American guy, went on and lied, like straight up lied about a whole bunch of stuff. Said that he was like a Vietnam vet, that they were threatening him, they were yelling this, they're yelling that, blah, blah, blah. The guy was like a known protester and kind of troublemaker in other cases anyway, turned out later. And that's kind of basically what happened. It was BS. And they just totally defaulted to the other guys, trashed this Nick Sandman guy, and then that was it. And the kid's just like, well, I didn't do anything. I didn't even, and he even went on the TV and said like, I didn't. I thought it was like it seems totally innocent, but people were trashing him. But here, let's get
Men who identified as Hebrew Israelites. This known hate group was already preaching racial slurs at indigenous marchers.
You're not supposed to worship eagles, buffaloes.
That's right,
lambs,
right.
All types of animals.
That's right.
This is the reason why the Lord took away your land. Indian means.
So the Indian means savage. You know where the name came from? So these guys are yelling at the native guys.
Savage. You know where that name came from? You know where that name came from? It came from the so-called white man.
Indian does not mean savage.
Indian means savage, brother.
I don't know where you got that from.
Look it up, brother.
I did look it up. I'm a historian.
You'll find it out for yourself.
This is the problem, Israel.
I mean, they knew of India. India existed. They weren't calling Indian savage. They just misinterpreted where they were as those being the Indians that they thought doesn't mean savage.
Always our women thinking they can come and distract things with their loud ass mouth because they not used to dealing with no real men. You nigga, get your old Uncle Tom ass out of here.
Even talking to other black guys like that.
Damn, Uncle Tomahawk.
That's right.
That's Uncle Tom's. You're Uncle Tomahawk.
That's right.
Got your head up the white man's ass.
Curious, a few of the Covington students moved closer to hear what the Israelites were saying.
Bring y'all crack ass up here and make a statement. Tell them come over here in the lion's den. You little dirty ass crackers, your day coming.
Without incident, the boys returned to their group, which was expanding as
Now, this girl's giving commentaries and stuff, kind of explaining what they didn't do. They didn't do that. I actually watched. I've seen this quite a while. When it first happened, I basically saw the full clip. And what she's saying is accurate. They just stand there. You can see the full parts.
more students arrived at their meeting spot. The Israelites did not stop.
On the back of your dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust," but you give its rights. The Bible condemns.
So this guy's like blasting gays, and then all these Catholic, mainly white kids, teenagers, like, whoa, dude, come on, like that's too much.
Homosexuality, man.
They're still
So guess
humans.
what? This is a bunch of future school shooters.
Bro, how you gonna tell somebody to go to shoot up a school? That's like really rude, bro. That's
North
racist, bro.
American, when you get old enough, they're gonna steal your organs.
Whoa, hey, why you being mean? Hey, we love you, kid. Hey, we love you.
He said he's a product of sodomy and he's proud.
It's not rape if you enjoy it.
See that?
He does not get a couple.
Bunch of dollar.
So that's like the worst thing said there was, it's not rape if you enjoy it, and then the other kids are like, he doesn't go to our school, he's not part of this. So even like the majority of the people here are even saying like, nah, they like even if someone did say something crazy in the group there, they're like, no, that's not we don't agree with that. They're actually actively saying, hey man, that's not right. And then even the black Hebrew Israelite guys were shooting off about the black kid there, saying they're gonna take your organs, they're gonna turn on you, blah blah blah. And the kids are like, no man, we love you. They call him the other guy racist, like, hey man, that's racist.
Are the buses here yet? Where are the buses?
After nearly an hour of enduring the verbal attack, the boys asked their chaperone if they could perform one of their pep rally chants to drown out the hate group. The chant attracted the attention of a group of Native Americans led by veteran activist Nathan Phillips. Though Mr. Phillips later claimed he was trying to get to the Lincoln Monument.
So we see this, he goes up, they're chanting and stuff. Everything actually seems pretty fine. They're liking.
It was this moment that many
Like the students are liking it. They're appreciating it. They're like, "Hey, this is peaceful. This is, these guys are yelling at us. They're berating us. This native guy comes in. They see it as like good intention."
feel
like
the boys crossed the line
man,
and
cool.
began mocking the Native Americans
guy's like, "Oh,
by doing
cool."
a move known to sports fans as the tomahawk chop. Mr. Phillips began moving to his right, down a line of boys, eventually stopping face to face with Nick Sandman. The young
Look,
man
everybody
remained
likes
where
it.
he had already been standing, placing his undivided attention on Mr. Phillips, who never once tried to move beyond him. It's worth noting that Nick
So
Being replayed over.
check this, because they're saying like they're blocking his path. He was blocking them. They surrounded him. All this kind of stuff. But you can clearly say they're all liking it. He walks right up to him. And that's like, this is the whole clip. It's
Actually
just
is.
this part.
We are hearing from a Native American elder and Vietnam War veteran speaking to CNN after a disturbing viral video shows a group of teens harassing and mocking him in the nation's capital.
The Native elder was identified as Nathan Phillips, a member of the Omaha Nation and a Vietnam vet.
Phillips describes the tense moments now being replayed over and over again online when a young man got right in his face. Watch.
That was when they surrounded us. And that's when I realized the dangerous situation I was in. And I couldn't go left, I couldn't go right, we couldn't go back without running into this mob. When that young man blocked my retreat, he put himself in front of me. So I stopped and I thought, okay, I'm going to take another step, but he wouldn't move. I took another step, he wouldn't move.
You feel you were blocked?
Oh, I was blocked.
You mentioned that the youth kept chanting, build the wall. Now, this is astounding, given the fact that you are Native American, and yet they're chanting, build the wall.
It makes little sense to angrily chant, build the wall, to a population with literally zero illegal immigrants who were here long before we were.
After watching every video posted...
Yeah, do you really think these kids are that dumb to say something that stupid and ignorant? Build a wall. Like, and they're that racist against this Native American guy that they're misidentifying as a Mexican?
From that day, from every possible angle. I've yet to see or hear one Covington kid utter those words.
Yeah, it's literally not said once in the entire clip. In any of them, you never hear anybody ever say, build the wall. The only people I think even mentioned the wall were the Black Israelite guys.
5 minutes. That wall. Why you don't build the damn wall? Why you don't build the damn sun for 5 minutes? That wall. Why you don't build the damn wall?
So if you want to make America great, because for you white people, go back to Europe where you came from. This is not your land.
As one of the Native men began to debate with one of the students, keep your eyes on Nick Sandman. This is a critical moment that was omitted from the mainstream narrative.
Get the f*** out of my face with that shit.
Hey, it's not bullshit.
It's proven, man. Come on.
It's proven.
It appears as though Nick is trying to hush his schoolmate to show more respect to Mr. Phillips.
Like, he clearly thinks this guy's doing something to him. Like, okay, is this some kind of thing or whatever? He's like, okay. It's awkward and everything, but whatever.
And that, was that.
It's not shooting off to him.
Their bus arrived and
Oh yeah, see, this is the other person.
Their victory.
We won, Grandpa! We fucking won, Grandpa!
There has been some question about the nature of your military service, and this is a good chance to clear it up. Some have said that you were a Vietnam veteran. I don't believe you have said that. What exactly is the nature of your service?
What I've always said is I've never stepped foot in South Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam vet, and I served in Marine Corps 72 to 76. I don't talk much about my Vietnam times. When I come home, those times, I got spit on, actually spit on, called a baby killer. Little blonde-haired, blue-eyed hippie girl come walking up to me one night and just spit on me, called me a baby killer. I feel bad because I beat up her boyfriend. I really do feel bad about that, She hurt my feelings.
So to be clear, you did not serve overseas.
I don't know how much clearer can that be?
At one point early on, it was rumored that they were chanting build the wall, but no one has surfaced any evidence of that whatsoever.
Well, that's what I heard from the Native American elder when he was talking about it in a video. He said,
I heard them saying, build that wall, build that wall.
It isn't audible on...
Yeah, maybe they could have said it, who knows, but the rest of what he said is BS. We just saw him there saying one thing, then saying the other, and we saw the video saying, like, he walked up to him and he did what, it was all BS. I mean, I wouldn't take anything this guy says seriously. He's BS. And then his grandson or whatever, the guy just flipping out and telling people to go back to Europe. I mean, if anything, they would have been the ones who built the wall. I mean, how stupid is that? It's like everything's inverted. Literally everything's inverted reality. But the messed up part is that CNN took the story like that, ran with it, didn't check anything, didn't ask it, and because they love the narrative. They love the narrative that these white Catholic MAGA supporters were berating this Native American war vet. Like that would ever friggin' happen. If I just search, conservatives getting harassed versus liberals getting harassed, do you know how many videos come up? It's crazy. The amount of people that get harassed as Trump supporters. You know? I can't spell, but it'll figure it out. I just can't spell anything. But look. Go Google doesn't even want to load it. Google doesn't want to. I spelled it wrong again. Oh, I love them. Look, just endless stuff. People getting attacked just because they're Trump supporters. People like just walking down the street and like they're like getting bum rushed by people. This happened a couple of years ago. The girl getting egged. She's like just trying to get in the building. They're just getting egged. This guy tells a story about getting like just harassed all the time because he likes Trump and he's a black guy, so they're constantly ripping on him for that. Just nonstop stuff. Like people getting smashed in the face with stuff. Like that. Even just that reporter. Like they went out in there and Antifa was just like smacking him in the back of the head with like a bike lock or something crazy. You know, it's insanity, man. Like the anger on the left is unreal. So for them to show like a white guy being racist doing it, they would just love it. They would love to find a clip like that. They don't care about anybody. They don't care if that was a black person beating up a white person physically. They wouldn't even cover it. They wouldn't even care. But just one guy standing in front of another guy and blocking his path, supposedly, that's national news. That they're putting on CNN. They're putting that in every airport. They pay to be played in airports, on every TV set that subscribes to their crap channel, even on their YouTube channels and stuff, putting a bunch of stuff. Like people getting, like nobody goes up to a Hillary 2020, someone with a Hillary 2020 t-shirt and says, F you Hillary supporter, yeah, back. Even though like they have like the worst conspiracies against Hillary, people are like, she's evil, man, she's evil, bro. You guys Google that stuff. Look at the Clinton body count. Like that's how they would talk. They wouldn't go up to you in dinner and like spit on you, throw stuff at you, scream at you, do all this crazy. It doesn't happen. You could just Google it all day long. You can YouTube this stuff and see how many people get like smashed and stuff in the face because they're just, and you can see the whole clips. People just being like standing there talking about stuff and be like, I like him, man. I don't support every, and then boom, they get cracked in the back of the head with like sticks and stuff. It's unreal. Look. See how many anti-Hillary protesters, anti-Clinton versus anti. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna. Nah, it's CBC. I'm not sure if I would trust that one. Yeah, there's no blood on that one. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to see. I mean, you can just go through, look at that stuff. All the amount of anti-Trump stuff that's violent. It's just insane. It's crazy. Anti-MAGA, even just MAGA stuff. They hate MAGA. Yeah, I went to have a baby on the way, and I went to the baby doctor, and I mentioned, I forget why Trump got brought up there, but I was just saying, like, I like him, and it's like, and he's an old Chinese man, and he doesn't like him, but the first thing he said, but that's the nice thing. You can like him and love him, or your wife can not like him, and I can hate him, and it's okay. But he was in Hong Kong, and he's like, yeah, they block all the streets. They're protesting and stuff. They have to protest because they can't get. It's not a real democracy. They can't actually get stuff. But I was like, yeah. But the weird thing is, like when I went to China last year, they they love Trump. Like, they really like him as a character. They really like that authoritative stance of like, he looks so American. They love American stuff, first of all, but just like it's almost like an action hero kind of thing. It's like a superhero kind of type character, and they really like that. And they call him like Uncle Donald and stuff. But in China, if you call the president their president, Winnie the Pooh, then you get banned, and you can actually the cops will visit you and everything, like big time. They even like banned like the movie and the emojis, like Winnie the Pooh emojis on all the apps and stuff. You can't use it. Like, they're that serious about it, that kind of stuff. But it's just funny, they really like Trump, and they don't have that kind of, and their government has that much control over them, and just, whatever. But it was just kind of nice that he was even saying that, that's the beauty of, basically Western civilization, is that it's democracy. Democracy exists, and democracy allows people to flourish and coexist and mingle and just have totally opposing views on a whole bunch of stuff, and that like nobody's dying, nobody's getting crushed by the government, nobody's whatever. But then you see some kind of the worst of it is on the left, which is supposed to be liberal, which is supposed to be the most democratic liberals. You don't hear like democratic conservatives. It's always like it's a liberal philosophy. But it's went so far left now that it's actually went towards communism. The very thing that China has in play. So it's just, again, inverted reality. It's weird stuff. So anyway, that's it for the day's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was pretty long. A lot of the Iran stuff is pretty crazy. Let's hope, let's hope to God those weren't real people on that plane. And for the families of all the people killed and stuff, because for sure it's real. I'm not really suggesting it's not, but just saying let's hope that this is just some kind of grand conspiracy thing. And but if it was an attack, man, I'd sign up. I'd go over there, man, in a second. If this is if it's legit. I mean, it's hard to tell if it's legit though. How do you know if it's legit? But if it's legit, I mean, it looks clear as day that thing was blown up in the sky. I mean, that's crazy. And they've been threatening stuff for nonstop. And they're like, anybody, the U.S. and their allies. I mean, Canada doesn't have anything against the States. We would back the States before we back Iran. I mean, think about it. But, I mean, the shitty part is, like, they killed their own people. Most of the people, most of those Canadians were Iranian. Or of Iranian descent. Like, most of them were. So, I mean, like, doesn't even make sense. Like, But, anyway... let's hope things don't get worse, and we'll see you on the next episode if we're still here. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, do all that kind of stuff. You've made this long, and I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.